Horry County in particular. Welcome to the 36th episode of Palmetto Politics. I can't believe it's been 36 episodes, John. Anyway, I'm Sean Grady. This is my co-host,
John Cummings, good morning.
and we're pretty excited about today because we'll talk about. Well, we're both educators, so of course we're going to think it's interesting. But before we get to that, let's talk real briefly about the City Council Special election results. If you weren't paying attention, Mr. Benton beat Brown. And so sadly, in talking about election out, only 9% of folks came out and voted. And that's of our eligible registered voters for that particular area. John, what do we do? How do we get people to come out and vote, or is there a way to get folks to come out and vote?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, people are so apathetic around the country. We were just speaking off the air, and then in New York, they had primaries in New York City on Tuesday. And it's a Democrat city. It's like 8-1, 10-1 Democrats, Republican. But in the Democrat primary in some of the local districts where they had primary races, 5% of the people showed up. And then I guess the great irony there is that everybody complains, but only 5% vote. So stop complaining and go out and vote.
Right.
I think part of it, at least, just for observations down in South Carolina, is that I think the local media does a really poor job of running these stories that there's a race, here's why it's important, we'll focus on the candidates, doing all of those. That's really what they should be doing. And I find that the further we go along with the media, the more national stories you get in the local news, because that comes from the parent companies, and the more fluff you get. I don't think you don't get features, these extended features on candidates, even though it's for a special election. And I think part of it is because the media is going to say, well, it's just Conway, so we don't want to,
Right.
leave a lot of the people out of the equation. But you know what? People are interested anyway. And if you're doing
Yes.
local politics, whether it's your district or not, people are going to want to know what happened in that race. So when you put on the news in the morning and says, "Oh yeah, election day is today. It's open from 8 to 7. Thanks."
Yeah.
That's what you get. Go vote. That they
Yeah.
don't do
If
features on
that.
the people. They don't. Yeah, and we used to get that in an extended model of local news would cover that over and over and over, all the different races, and they really dropped the ball. I mean, we used to have the editorials. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah.
where at the end of the news, they would save 5 minutes for local people to discuss issues they wanted. You make a presentation on your whatever your idea is, or
What a
they would
novel
have
idea.
candidates for local races in the last 3 minutes of the news to come on and say, okay, here's why I want your vote. Instead of having to spend ridiculous money on television ads, you
Yep.
just come on the last few minutes of the local news and say, okay, here's why you won't vote for me. And then they have the next person on the next night and the next
Right.
person on the next night. They don't do that
Yep.
anymore. And I
Yeah.
think
And they
that's
should.
part of it too. There's a lot of apathy. There's a lot of people who think their votes don't count. And look, they don't. Nobody trusts the vote right now. And
Well, I'm
but
going to
I
be
think
honest.
I think the
Do
media
you
dropped the
listen?
ball too.
Yeah. Do you listen to 94.5 anymore? I don't.
No,
I
no.
okay. Yeah, I don't listen to you because I would say I don't know if the local radio does anything with the candidates or not, but that should happen there. I will say this: I was kind of surprised by this. I had was at work yesterday, and I popped over to Crafty Rooster to grab some lunch, and or maybe it was Monday, anyway, whatever day it was, and it was really slow, and so as I started to order, I on or whatever. And so this guy says, "Oh, do you own a sporting goods store?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he goes, "I want to ask you a couple of questions." And so finished my order. It turns out he's a reporter for an online or a news company. And so he was asking about the city council voted down the idea to put metered parking back. Now they've done it twice before, and I don't know if people realize it or not, but both times they've done it, what ended up happening is that local businesses were hurt by it because people said, "I'm not going to pay to park, so I guess I'm not coming to your business anymore." And the last time it happened was when, in this, they had Kmart and they had opened up this new strip mall. And so instead of coming to downtown to shop, people just went over there to the Kmart strip mall, and that's where they did their shopping. And so it really hurt the downtown Conway area. So, and I suspect that would happen again. The other thing was they were talking about one or two for each 2 hours that you were parked there with, and supposedly with a 2 hour, you can't stay more than 2 hours kind of thing. And which in general, I think that's not a bad idea, because it shouldn't take you more than 2 hours to have a meal and then, or go shopping and leave or whatever. However, if you want someone who's going to have a lunch and then they're going to go on Main Street or 3rd Avenue or 4th Avenue, then 2 hours is probably not going to be enough time. But at any rate, their great idea was to charge, like I said, $1 or $2, and then that money was supposed to then be funneled into a parking garage. Now, I'm not a math major, but there are not a lot of parking spaces in downtown Conway. And even if they were somebody in every parking space paying $2 every 2 hours, because really nothing happens until 11. I'm gonna tell you right now, ain't nobody down there until 11 o'clock. I know, because I'm there. I have a business. So really your hours of business are about 11 until maybe 8. And a lot of businesses close if they're not restaurants. They close at 3, 4, 5. It's crazy. So I stay up until 6:30, folks. But anyway, so that's not a lot of money coming in. So they seem to build a $5 million parking garage. I'd be dead.
Yeah, you and
It's
everybody
not going
else.
to
Yeah.
happen. It's less likely to happen than I-73. So I mean,
I think
don't
that
get it.
the meters are so counterproductive, because you don't, like you said, if people want to come in and shop, they don't want to worry
Yeah.
about having to run out to the meter if they want to come in and have
Yep.
lunch or dinner or whatever. And what happens is the amount of people that stay away,
Yeah.
you lose, all of the merchants lose that tax money, and obviously
Yep.
the city and the state, they don't collect the money, so it's a wash, and sometimes it's worse than a wash.
Yeah.
And that's what
People go out of
kills
business.
neighborhoods in small towns. It's what kills the
Yeah.
business district in small towns. It's what kills neighborhoods and commercial strips in big cities. Is
Yes.
you got to worry about your meter, and if you forget, they're out there waiting for that time to click off,
Yes.
and then they hit you for $50, and then guess what? You're never going back to Conway
Never going
again
back.
to
Never.
shop. You're never going
Exactly.
back. You go into the mall. You go into
Hmm.
the mall to park your car and just leave it there and not worry about it.
Yep. Yeah, and that's kind of thing what happened. That's why, as I said, they had the Kmart shopping center. It was free parking, so people just went there and shopped and had their meals there. So I'm glad it was voted down and they didn't
Yeah,
do it.
you want
Now,
to encourage people to park and walk and shop. That's what you
yes,
want.
yeah. So what I suggested is that instead of having parking meters, this is a temporary solution, and then I have a secondary idea for how to have a more permanent solution. They could make from Elm Street to Main Street on both 4th Avenue and 3rd Avenue one way. So, for example, on 3rd Avenue, you'd be coming into town, and then on 4th Avenue, you'd go out of town. So that's about 2 blocks when you do it that way. So you have Elm Street, and then you have Laurel Street, and then you have Main Street. So we just and your businesses really are located. So, and here's why that would help, because if you made that one way, you put that lane in the center. Guess what that now does to the sides? Now you can have double your parking, because right now everybody has to parallel park. Well, once you put that lane in the center, now you can have the angled
It's
parking.
angle parking,
So
right?
yeah, so instead of having one car there, you can now have 2 cars in that spot. So it instantaneously doubles parking on both 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue. Now, while that may not be the permanent solution, because it's still really not enough parking for everybody that you want to get downtown, because we have the courthouse there, and there's people coming in to pay their taxes and their fees and their fines. What you could do after you have that, and that would take, and I said, look, that's like a 72 hour thing to do. All you gotta do is have some folks go down there, take up the current lines, and then paint new ones. It's not super labor intensive. Now, if they want to charge to get people to parking lot, rather than creating this metered system where like you said, nobody's going to do it, you have that parking lot be charged parking, and folks say, well, then nobody's going to park there anyway because it's too far away. But here's the kicker. The reason why this will take a little bit longer is because you hire shuttle buses or vans, and the money that they pay really isn't for parking. It's to cover the cost of the shuttle that drops them off in 4 locations around the downtown area. And the shuttles come by every 15 minutes. So people will be like, hey, I go in and grab my lunch. If I want to jump back on the shuttle, go back to my car, I can. If not, I'm going to go down and check out a few more stores. couple stores. All right, I've got my arms full. Jump on the shuttle, take them back to your car, load them in your car, get back on another shuttle, go back. You know what I'm saying? And people will pay to do that. I'd pay to do that. I'd pay $2 or $3 to park if I got a shuttle ride out of it.
Yeah,
Especially when the weather's either
sure. And
super hot or it.
yeah, if you get one of those trolley looking type buses,
Yes.
where you
Yes.
can just jump on and jump off. Yeah, those
Bingo.
are great, and they work. And they,
Yep.
there's plenty of municipalities and towns and counties around the country that do that. And
Yep.
it's cutesy. It's got a hook to it. And people
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, let's go jump on the trolley. You just don't want to do vans and stuff.
Yeah,
Something that's
trolleys
home,
is a better
something
way
that's
to go.
homey, towny, right? The
Yep.
trolley looking buses. They look like trolleys, but they're buses.
Yep.
Yeah, you could do
Right.
that. I think it would be great. And eventually, I think that would more than pay for itself,
Yes.
because people again are
Yes.
comfortable. Like, okay, I paid and I can stay there as long as I want because I parked my car. Within
Park
reason,
my
you're not going to leave it
car.
overnight. But
Yep.
if you want to, yeah,
Right.
just park my car. I'm going to shop, and there's no time on it. You just pay the flat fee to
Yep.
have the use of the trolley. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And see that I would do. I think folks would do that, and you could still have the other parking on the street. That wouldn't be an issue. I mean, you could, like I said, you could leave the one-way Third, Fourth Avenue, and have the trolley come through and pick people up that didn't want to park. Um, to me that's like a no-brainer, and that's relatively inexpensive. And so anyway, so it was interesting. This guy came in, and I thought, wow, a reporter actually doing his job. Shocking. He was going through the plot.
Right.
Was a good suggestion. So that, and then so I'll see that story come out. I guess I don't know. Maybe it was out today. I'm not even sure, but I thought that was interesting. So that's kind of the roundup of the local Ori politics. But before we jump on to what we're going to talk about eventually, electing principals, I want to talk a little bit about grassroots organizations. Now, there are always groups that you agree with or disagree with, and then there are individuals within groups that you agree with and you disagree with. But there's a couple of things that you can't find fault with, and I'm going to say MySCGOP is one of the either love them or they hate them. It seems to be one way or the other. But I'm not going to say I love them. I certainly don't hate them. I think the work that is done by the grassroots, the individuals involved in that, is astounding. How much work. And, call Jeff Davis. I mean, he sued some of my friends for reasons that I don't understand. But I wasn't there. I don't know. So I've only heard their side of the story. So, but you can't fault this guy for the work he does. I was just looking, because I follow emails, and he just 10,000 door hangers. And they're door hangers that are supposed to get people excited rather, to come out and participate in the political process. 10,
That's the way
John,
to
that is
do it.
astounding.
That's the way
Listen,
to
I
do
had
it. Door
20
to door.
when I ordered those, and this guy, and this is just in Greenville County now, 10,000 door hangers for just Greenville County. If you don't think this guy is going to be making a difference, and I'm not saying just Jeff, obviously he had 425 people in Greenville County that voted for him. So let's say you get 10% of that. 42 people willing to go hang door hangers on the neighborhood doors. Tell me how that doesn't benefit the Republican Party, John.
Yeah. The grassroots realizes that retail politics, the old door to door politics, is the best one there is. There is no better way to get people back involved than hanging something on their door and hopefully running into them and talking a little politics with them. And that's something, like I said, that the grassroots understands. And they have to do it because they don't have the money that
Right.
these other party organizations have. So you need live bodies. And you can always I firmly believe this. If you get the right people and enough people, you can always outwork the money.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And I thought, on the door hangers that MySCGOP created, it says every Friday from 11 to 1, we'll talk coffee and politics, which is brilliant because people can pop in on a Friday. Okay, let's see what this group is really about. And they can sit down into something that I want to be involved in, or just something I don't want to be involved in. Or maybe it's just people coming in saying, why haven't they fixed the street? Why aren't the potholes fixed? Or, why haven't they added more turn lanes? Or why isn't there a red light in this area? And it gives people an outlet, because let's be honest, even our local no office to go and speak to Carla Schusler. So unless you have some way to contact her and hope that she responds to you, you don't have a voice to get something from your local representation to do for you. So I think, again, like I said, like it or not, MySCGOP is very smart and he's also getting other counties. They're following suit. They're creating their own door hangers. So I'm going to give the man his due. I mean, that's impressive, John. If he can spread that kind of enthusiasm across our state, I applaud it, because we just got to saying here in percent of the people turned out to vote. You were just saying in New York, 5%. Just in the
5%.
Democratic primary, only 5% of Democrats turned out to vote. So we have a real apathetic position right now among voters, and honestly, who can blame them? John and I will tell you, both of us are deeply concerned about our election process, but both of us are also very committed to still voting, because as I've said as a coach, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and you have zero chance of getting a hit if you don't swing the bat. So it is essential that you go and vote. Account. And I think Jeanette Spurlock a lot of times will say that we have to have enough votes to overcome the cheat. And she's not wrong. I mean, I have to feel like we can't stand by for another 2020 and think that it's going to be okay. So we've got to do everything we can, everything in our power to get people out to vote. So again, I just my hats off to the folks working. I'm just at 10,000 door hangers. That's a lot of doors to knock on. And as a candidate, that's, myself and a couple guys, we knocked on 2,500 doors. And that was a daunting task. So to get out and be able to put door hangers on 10,000 doors, whew, that's some work. That's some work in one county. That is some work.
Yeah, and that's how you are seen. That's how you get out there. You have to get out there and meet people, like knock on doors, show up at events, and just engage. And you're battling apathy, and it's really difficult. Apathy is the sworn enemy of democracy. And not only are people not confident in the elections themselves, people are tired of electing people who don't represent them. They're just tired of it, and they're tired of being put into this box where they have to vote for that people. That's why we talked about at length on this show the open primaries.
Yeah.
You end up every other November, you end up holding your nose and voting for a Republican that you don't really like, but it's either that person or the Democrat, because in the open primary, you had enough Democrats cross over and vote for the squishy Republican, and that's who we end up with, is a bunch of squishy Republicans. So you're really battling a lot of different forces to overcome that apathy, but the best way to do it is door to door.
Yeah. I saw a post put out by the Florence Democrat. I follow the Horry County Democrats. Any Democratic Party that does any social media, I try to follow them because I want to know what they're thinking. And anyway, they put out a post in which they gave kudos to Joe Biden for all the work his administration has done in this if you will, Green New Deal garbage. But what does he call it? The New American Agenda, something like that. I can't remember what he called it. But anyway, they alluded that the companies coming here to South Carolina were coming here because of something Joe Biden did. And I said, nah. I said, no. I said, all money brought those companies here. And the only thing they could even try to say that they had any part in was Santee Cooper was granted some money, but then ultimately I don't think they were selected because they only selected seven states. And when you look at the breakdown of the states that got the money, ultimately South Carolina didn't get any. They were selected as one of the groups that could get a grant. But when I looked at when you homed in a little bit further, you saw that they didn't actually get any of the money. It went to some other states. But it's interesting because that's what they're putting out there. And that's what Joe is saying. He's like, oh, look at all these jobs. The federal government very rarely has any role whatsoever in the creation of jobs. It is really, truthfully, it is a state level thing. Now, if there is federal funding that's given, like I know in some cases there were federal dollars sent out to safety. There's some federal dollars that go out to public schools. So in that respect, yeah, I'll give him credit if he's behind that. But in terms of these private companies coming into the various states, yeah, no, Joe, you didn't have anything to do with that. So speaking of public schools, John, let's go ahead
I
and
just
jump into. Go ahead.
just for 1 second, let me pick up on what you're just saying about the money. That Volkswagen deal, Volkswagen Scout, that's a perfect
Yeah.
example. I mean, that again, that's they're saying, well, we're going to create jobs. If you took what is basically, look, it's basically $2 billion, right? I mean, when you look at the cash they gave them plus the incentives, it's close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like 1.7.
it's about two. It's close. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you took that money and let's say you gave $50,000 to 4,000 small business owners, how many more jobs do you think you create?
Oh, oh my
Now,
God.
I don't think the
Way
government
more.
should. I don't think the government should be giving out checks to do that. That's my theory. They should just create an environment where businesses can thrive, like a little taxation,
Mhm.
educated populace, etc. But
Yeah.
if you were going to look at that side of it, I think that money would be far better spent if you gave it to local businesses who create lots of small businesses who create a lot more jobs for people
Right.
in the area, and not 4,000 Volkswagen jobs, and many of which are going to be taken by people who are coming here from Germany in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I would certainly, if they gave me $50,000, I'd hire some help. So,
I think you and
but
everybody else, and it would
yeah,
be. You want to talk about downtown Conway?
yeah,
If there was 4,000 business owners, and even if 10 of them were from Conway, think about what 10 small businesses could do with $50,000 to create a different environment, a business environment in a place like Conway.
right. Yeah, absolutely. That's tremendous. So,
Go back to the
but
school.
now,
Sorry.
yeah. No, that's totally okay. I'm glad you brought that up. But President Trump was at, I guess, I'm not sure where he was at. I don't remember where he was
Was,
speaking at
was the
when.
faith and freedom, or because that was the big speech he made recently, but he's been out and
Yeah.
about quite a bit.
Yes, I'm not. So again, I'm not sure where he was at when he made this statement, but that doesn't really matter. But he suggested that if he were to win re-election, that he was going to seek to have parents have things like who was in charge of the schools. And while on the surface, I think, well, that sounds like a great idea. His ultimate suggestion was that principals of the various schools be elected. Now, so I took a little time to research how many schools, my private schools, to my public schools, and I'm assuming in that includes public charter schools as well. But in South Carolina, as an example, there are 1,292 public schools that would then be eligible to have their principals elected. And just so you kind of have how many elections that would be, you have 1,292 principals that would then be seeking election. We only have 124 state representatives and 46 senators. So 100 the assembly that we vote on. So that would be almost a tenfold number of people to be elected in South Carolina. And, just throwing out every 4 years, because it would be so expensive to do that every 2 years. So minimum, it would have to be every 6 years you did that kind of thing, but every 4 years. Now, when I worked in the Christian private industry and as a missionary, what they typically did was you had a 4-year contract if you went overseas, just because it is expensive to move you over there and to put you into housing and all of that. So typically a 4-year contract. So that's kind of why I said 4 years makes sense. And we do elect our senators, our state senators, every 4 years. So I think 4 years kind of makes sense. But that's South Carolina. So then when we look at the nation as a whole, you will be looking at, I added it up, it's 101,451 public schools today. Now, if you've been here in Horry County, you know that a lot of our schools are over capacity. So that means we are in dire need of more schools. So that number is going to go up, not down. And I looked at California in particular because they have the most public schools. They have 10,413 public schools. And to my horror and shock and surprise, I looked up how many, because I thought, okay, we have 170. What does California have? Folks, they have 40 senators, so 6 fewer than we do, and they have 80 representatives.
Right. And 40
So they
million
have
people.
100, yeah, they have 120 state representatives and senators combined out of a pop. My head wants to go. So imagine that they now have to hold elections that up until now for state elections, I mean, of course, we're not talking about mayors and all the other things. And then this is just state level. I'm not even talking about federal. How many U.S. congressmen do they have? Was it 50,
I think
53?
they're 53.
Yeah, 53. So we're not even talking about state elections. So essentially, they would go from having 120 plus some mayors here, there, and yonder to 10,413 more elections on top of that.
Yeah, it's you know what I think the idea is a great one because ultimately the idea is about getting parents more involved in education, and that is something that we have walked away from for a long time, for decades. And you know what? In many cases, the government pushed people away purposely so that they could control what goes on rather than the parents. So I think the idea is a great one, but and if President Trump wants to push that issue, at least be influential when it comes to parental involvement, I think that's great. I think it's great for any candidate. But when it comes to if the federal government is going to get involved in this, count me out.
Yeah.
I think the Department of Education should be eliminated. It would certainly save a lot of money. I think that the decline of the American education system started when the federal government got involved in education. States were doing a great job by themselves. Again, it's the laboratory of democracy. States competing against other states to say, hey, look, we got the best schools. Move to our state. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
whole idea about this federalist system was about. So once the federal government got involved in education, what we go from the top three to the bottom three.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, our education
Yeah.
system, let's be honest, is horrible.
Yeah. And I'll contend that it started before that. Again, I still stick with the real decline started when the Supreme Court took out the Bible and prayer from schools. You do need a moral and religious people to really function well in a republic. Such as we have, constitutional republic. But it was absolutely exacerbated by the fact that the federal government tried to step in. The federal government, Ronald Reagan had it right. The most frightening words ever is "I'm here to help."
I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like no, they don't. They always screw it up. They don't do it. They don't do it well at all. Um,
But
but
we missed
that
the
doesn't.
boat. Yeah, we missed the boat again. Especially as Christians, we missed the boat because if we ever fought with the fervor that this trans rights groups are fighting to have their books in libraries and classrooms, if we ever fought like that about keeping God in the
Yep.
public square, which is where God belongs, in the public
Yep.
square. I mean, the framers it was never their intent to eliminate God from the public square. That was not the intent. We
Right.
all know that. The Supreme
Yep.
Court has done that through ridiculous decisions that they've made throughout the years. But I mean, I think if we would have fought that hard, you'd still have God in the classroom, or at least you'd have the moment of silence at the beginning of the day to try to have everybody collect their thoughts. And most importantly, have students realize that it's not all about them, that there's something bigger than them.
Yeah, and what's interesting is if you go back and look at the makeup of the Supreme Court when that conservative Supreme, it was not a liberal Supreme Court when that happened. So I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but something went
I,
very, very wrong.
yeah, I used to tell my students all the time. I said the first guy to find the phrase separation of church and state in the Constitution gets an A. It's not in there. It's not in there. You could look all you want. It's not in there. It just says
This
Congress
is,
shall establish no religion. That's what it says. So
yes.
no Church of America. And look, you have to think about where they were coming from. They were coming from Church of England, right? They had to live that
Absolutely.
way. And that
Yep.
that was one of the big issues in the revolution and that's why this is in the First Amendment, because the framers realized how important it was. When we had that revolution, you had a large segment of the population that was being asked to revolt against their government and their religion at the same time because it
Yeah.
was a state religion. So that was something that they tried to avoid. And believe me, their intent was not to eliminate God from the public square. It never was. But yeah, to get back to federal control of schools and federal interruption or intervention in schools, I'm out. Just keep them as
Yep.
far away from schools as they can be. That's why you had Common Core. That's why you had this issue with, 3 textbook companies controlling the entire industry and putting all this nonsense into books.
Remember
I mean,
phonics out in California?
they flipped all
I
of it.
mean, they got rid of phonics and went to ebonics.
Yeah, and they went to the, what is that, visual learning, or it's okay if you spell things
Oh
wrong.
my
No, it's not.
God.
It's not.
No, yeah.
One of my pet peeves, and I'll
They
get a
were
little off the topic
clues.
here. When I get
Yeah.
on social media, I want to sit there with a red pen and correct everybody's grammar. I'm just,
No,
I mean,
I know.
people, I mean, you're 60 years old. You don't know the difference between there, and there. Really?
Yeah.
Do you really not
Yeah.
know that?
Yeah.
So,
Um, I do think that Jeanette makes a good point, and I go back to, again, because we're both history teachers. I go back to, and because I can't think of the gentleman's name, that this kind of all started with. You had a widow who they being the Congress at that time, wanted to give money to help her, and help me out here, John. I can't think who it was, stood up and said, well, if we want to do, each of us take money out of our salaries and donate it to help. And nobody moved.
yeah,
Nobody
no,
wanted to
yeah.
do that. But and so the point being that when Congress realizes that they can actually spend other people's without any consequence, they start doing it. And that is a terrible thing, and the idea what used to be right. Thank you. The Davy Crockett speech. Thank you, Jeanette. I couldn't think of who it was. So we've got to reel that back in somehow. We've got to get the federal government was really just supposed to be very basic. I go back to, what did Washington have? He had basically the War Department, which we would now call the Department of
Yeah,
Defense.
they had 4 cabinet departments.
Yeah,
4. They had 4.
and Secretary of State. We don't need all of the EA, the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation. It's like, I mean, sometimes they just make up departments. It's like,
Yeah, commerce.
department. Yeah, Department of Commerce. I mean, come
For
on.
what?
We don't need all this.
No, it's just layers and layers and layers and layers. And I know Jeanette
Of
made it.
bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah, Jeanette made this point. Once we stop helping each other and start letting the government meet our needs, that was basically, that happened because the government was very intent on ruin or splitting up neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you had the busing issue in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, in many locales, they used busing, which was needed in many places, let's be honest. But they used busing to divide neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
that's what they did in the cities. The cities, in the northern cities, the Northeast and the Midwest, the neighborhoods were not segregated because of law. Neighborhoods were segregated because like people like to live with like people. When you're at immigrant communities, when you come from another country and your language is, your English is not great or whatever, where are you going to go? You're going to go to a community that identifies with you, that you get the customs are there, everything's in place, the language is there, and that's great. So you had schools, and I used to hear Dr. Walter Williams talk about this all the time, and I've heard Thomas Sowell talk about it, how they went to all black schools. They went to all black schools, and in many cases, the inner city black schools performed equally or outperformed schools in white neighborhoods. But guess what they did with busing up there, which didn't need to happen. I mean, busing, like I said, desegregation was not a legal issue up there. It was just that that's who lived in the neighborhood, and everybody walked to school. Right. And the fact that everybody walked to school meant mom and dad knew what was going on at school because it was the neighborhood school. And the government, unfortunately, used the busing issue in many cases, especially in urban areas, to get parents out of the equation when it came to school. So if they bus you 18 blocks, 20 blocks, 3 miles away, wherever you were going to a school that's supposedly superior and not in your
Parents aren't going to
neighborhood,
show up.
mom and dad are not going to school board meetings because they get home from work and they don't have the time to go to the school board meetings. But when it was down the block, they were all involved. So unfortunately, you always have negative forces at work that were trying to divide neighborhoods and really run them down and take the parents out of the equation. So they attack the family once again, and look what you get.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons why now you have a very limited participation in the school board meetings that even we have here in Horry County. I mean, you'll have some of the same people will show up. The type of participation that you once did. I mean, I remember we used to have the what was it, the PTA meetings, Parent Teacher Association. I mean, those are virtually non-existent. They just don't they don't encourage it. They don't want parents to be involved. And of course, we famously know that Attorney General Garland said, "Yeah, we're terrorists, domestic terrorists." And Moms for Liberty, they've been working really, really hard. That was another thing I noted. On some of the Democratic pages, I saw that the Democrats were working really hard to be a rebuttal to the Moms for Liberty. They want to push back against them. So here in South Carolina, we've done a pretty good job in terms of keeping our values more conservative, certainly than other Democratic states. But the people, I think, John, you say this all the time, the people of South Carolina are conservative, but our legislative body doesn't really reflect that.
Not at all. Not at all. When you sit and go through the things that they passed, and never even a mention, really, if you look at it, nothing about the integrity of the elections. Nobody even introduced legislation. I would, if I was in office, if I were to run for office and I would win, first thing I would do is introduce a bill getting rid of the computerized voting. First thing.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has confidence in those computers, because everybody has a computer and everybody's computer has been compromised.
Yep.
Everybody gets hacked. Their Facebook gets hacked. Their Instagram gets hacked. Everybody's stuff gets hacked. So everybody knows that computers can be hacked. And I don't think that that's helping the situation when it comes to apathy in elections either. I don't think people have any confidence in sliding that paper into a scanner, and then you have no idea where it goes. You don't know what happens with that. And the fact that people can tap into that scanner however they want to do it, whether it's Wi-Fi or a flash drive or whatever, they can do it. We all know it.
Yep.
So people aren't confident, and they think it's convenient, but there's no confidence there. None.
Well, and I had argued, and so I apologize for this argument, but I had argued that, well, listen, it actually is a paper form, because we vote electronically, but then you have that paper ballot that you put in the system. So you do have a paper ballot that traces it. Here's the problem, though, and I didn't even think about this, is that how that ballot is then scored is based on the barcode that is beside each candidate's name that you voted for. The problem is you don't really know if that barcode is accurately coded to the name that you mean. So let's say my barcode, was up there and it said Shannon Grady, but maybe barcoded secretly to go to Mikey Mash. Now, folks, I don't really think that happened. Please understand, I'm not Mikey Mash won. I'm not trying to say he didn't win, but I'm just saying, for instance, I really have no way to know that. So there could have been a situation where a vote for me or every fourth vote for me flipped to, because we've proven that that's been done. So I agree with John wholeheartedly. I'm sorry. We've got to get rid of the computer voting systems. They are just too easily manipulated. They've got to go. We got to go back to a more traceable paper ballot system, a less or more difficult system of hacking. Get rid of this, like you said, the month-long mail in your vote,
Election
go vote
day.
here. Yeah, we should have election day. Look, I've even conceded that maybe you have the week before election for people to vote in person, but not more than that. Not more than that.
Well, my thing about the getting rid of election day and having election month
Right.
was, again, it eliminated or at least hurt this whole idea of community.
Yeah.
It was election day. That was a big part of election day. We were off for presidential elections at one time in New York, but it was the whole idea of community. We all voted locally. We all pretty much walked to vote. And, you would go in there and you'd be waiting online and somebody would see you go, oh, hey, your mom was here a little while ago. Everybody knew who you were. So that in and of itself really shuts down a lot of fraud, because everybody knows who everybody is at the polling place because it's small and local. Now they're trying to go, they want to go to, you have a month-long election period. You go to these big voting centers where nobody knows anybody, and you're just a number. So you've undermined the civic responsibility of voting. You've taken the community's role out of voting, and you've opened it wide up for more fraud. So there's no upside to this for me. Just have an election day, open the polls from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you can't make it, there'll be plenty of time to ask for an absentee ballot ahead of time. There's always been absentee ballots in every state. You can always request one, and that's it. Because my thing is that the community was part of keeping fraud out of the equation. Because if you voted at your local place, everybody knew everybody. And if you saw people coming in from the outside and you're like, oh, I don't know these, I don't really know these people. Or if they, as they often do, they'll go to places and pick people up, and rightfully so, who can't get to the polling places in a van. And if you did that from a local facility or, assisted living, or whatever, you would know those people. You would probably know them because they vote there all the time. Some changes
Right.
somewhat. But
Yep.
these large voting centers and months at a time, all it does is give people who are looking to cheat anyway, it just gives them more
Yep.
time and more ability to do
More
it.
opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe they go vote in 14 different precincts. Who
We
knows?
we had that happen. I'll tell you
Yeah.
a little story. When I ran for Congress
Yep.
on election day, people at the poll who were working the poll, and this was a neighborhood poll. We actually had it in a local church. Up there, they
Right.
still actually allow churches to have elections, if you could believe that.
Yeah.
So as long as it's not in the church itself, it's in the church hall. So
Yeah.
they have the local, and people noticed that, hey, wait a minute, I recognize these people are already here. So there were groups of people coming in, voting, going out in the parking lot, changing their clothes, and coming back in and voting again. So they
Oh
got
my
spotted.
gosh.
Yeah, they got spotted. And somebody said, hey, wait a minute. Now, these are at the polling places, it's Democrats and Republicans. And quite frankly, it's mostly Democrats because it's 8-1, 9-1 Democrats and Republicans. But these people spotted this group. It was about 4 people, 3 or 4 people in this
Yeah.
case.
Right.
And they questioned them and they ran out. They took off. So at the time, you can visit the polls. When you're running for office, you can visit the polling places. So my campaign manager was at the polling place at that time. You're gonna go and check, see if everybody's okay.
Right.
You bring a
Yeah.
case of soda, whatever you're gonna do.
Right.
Just it's
Yeah.
it's the nice thing to do. Take care of the poll workers. So my campaign manager was in the polling place when that happened. And he tweeted out what happened, that the police were responding because there were multiple people who were suspected of voting multiple times and they were chased from the polling place. And guess what happened? They shut down his Twitter account.
Oh my God.
They shut it
Are you
down
kidding me?
because they said he was putting out false propaganda and all that. He was standing there when it happened. And this was Democrats and Republicans, and mostly Democrats, that actually foiled it. Good for them because they believed in the
Yeah.
process. People that work in the polls are, generally speaking, are usually like that. And they shut down his Twitter account for the rest of election day. he couldn't tweet anything. And here's a guy running not just my campaign, but a couple others, and he couldn't tweet anything.
That's insane.
Yeah, even though he was a witness.
I have so many problems with social media. Facebook, Twitter's obviously a little better. So I still better with Elon Musk having made some changes, but Facebook is abysmal, absolutely abysmal. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's a
terrible.
necessary evil. It
Yeah,
really is.
exactly. How dare you have a different opinion? And we talked the other day about the guy that had the ring door incident where it was alleged that was racist, and so Amazon then cut off all of his access to his systems. And I'm not a litigious person. I don't think suing is always the answer. But in this case, I mean, this dude should sue the crap out of them because who the hell do you think you are? Even if the guy did say something racist, he's
Right.
not an employee. He doesn't
No.
work for you. He has free speech. And it turns out he didn't say anything, but
And
he
he ended
has
up on a
free
list.
speech. Right. So they have to reinstate it. But I'm like, there isn't an apology enough overreach there.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
like, wow.
where do you, was it Casper Weinberger during the Reagan administration, Iran Contra, after it was all
Yeah,
over and they exonerated him, he said, okay, who do I see about getting my reputation back?
exactly.
And that was 30 years
Exactly.
ago. That's a long
Yeah.
time. It's more than that. That's exactly what this is all about. I mean, they will cancel you on absolutely nothing. No proof,
Yeah.
no fact, no nothing. Because what happens is there's a lie, it goes out there and everybody repeats the lie, and all of a sudden it's fact.
Well, so let me talk really quick. That triggered something else in my memory. I saw where Representative Stuart Jones had something that was said by General Wesley Clark. Wesley Clark had said after 9/11 that he had read some papers and was briefed on the fact that after 9/11 happened, the United States had planned to invade 7 countries. Um, and I think we ticked just about all of them off the list. Iran. And why Stewart brought that up is because, of course, one of the things that they're trying to drag Trump to the mud over is this allegation that he had on him, secret documents that laid out how we would invade Iran. And I think it was General Milley was basically saying the idea that we had to invade Iran. I'm going to call BS on that. There's no way you'd ever convince me that Trump was plotting to invade
No,
any country. No
no.
way. This man's not a war hog.
It's the opposite, really.
He's more like a dove. So I think that was 100% the Department of Defense had that put together, probably in region with the CIA. But the point that Stuart Jones was making was that, we've got to be a little concerned that the United States has plans to invade. Now, not to defend against an invasion, which we should have plans for that. We should have contingency plans for every that may take on invading us or attacking our allies or whatever. But we should not have plans to invade other countries. That's not a thing we should be doing.
Yeah, and you're right. You can't sell me on the fact that President Trump was ever involved in any of that, because he was so intent in getting out of everywhere and making sure that we're more concerned with securing our own borders and keeping peace at home and keeping people at arm's length. And to be honest, he had done a pretty good job of that. Everybody thought, remember in the campaign in 2016, oh my God, we're going to World War. Look, go through history. Democrats put us in war. They're not Republicans. They're not happening.
Yep.
That's basically how it goes usually. So
World War I, who was that? Woodrow Wilson. He kept us out of war until he got elected again.
Don't even get me started on Wilson, the king of the progressives.
FDR.
But just President Trump, that's one thing he's not looking to do. And Milley, of all people, who, when you read that he had a back channel to his compatriot in China saying, don't worry, if anything's going to happen, if I find out that President Trump's going to do anything to you guys, I'll let you know. You let me know.
Yeah.
You're
and then he sent a memo out saying anything that comes through. You're not the president.
Yeah, guys. My opinion, you should be in shackles.
He should be. That's what I said. He's a traitor. It's treason.
You're going to call.
Absolutely ought to be in jail. He should have all of his military privileges taken away from him. It's appalling.
If all of this plays out, I mean, if we're fortunate enough, blessed enough that we can unravel everything that's going on, I think people are going to be shocked and horrified about the level of corruption and just out and out treasonous behavior that exists at the federal level by so many people, and it's in both parties. These are people that are just interested in power and prestige and holding on to it, and the hell with we the people. They don't care a lick about we the people. They're not there to represent. They're there to represent themselves and their own interests. And the quicker we can get to the bottom of this, and this is quickly unraveling on Biden. Quickly. I mean, it's coming.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more things they can roll out off the front page, but I'll say this here. I'd said it before. I'll say it again. I don't know that he's going to make it to Labor Day. I mean, I don't know how they're going to get him out of office, but he's up against it now. Now you're up around $40-50 million. People are coming out of the woodwork. IRS people are coming out. Everybody's coming out, and I just
John, that's just Hunter. That's Hunter. That isn't Joe.
I think they'll have the 10% for the big guy, and then like I said the other day, they have to find out who the bigger guy is. You can't tell me that Joe Biden was running this whole operation, because Joe Biden's not smart enough to run this whole operation, and it has nothing to do with his reported dementia. He was never the sharpest pencil in the box to begin with, and unless he had a lot of cover, there was no way.
I think there's a guy,
at
least for a time, whose last name starts with an O. I'm just saying, Obama.
Yeah, and the thing that surprises me is, I mean, everybody's heard the quote about President Obama and his description of Biden, and never underestimate his ability to F things up. That was the quote. So if that were the case, are you really that comfortable with the layers of bureaucracy there? Is it really that, well entrenched that you can afford to let him freely operate? I mean, that would mean that you were pretty confident that all the bases were covered, because that this guy is just out of control. I mean, and he's pretty much said so. So, are you really that comfortable that the layers, that it's that thick, that you can let a guy who, look, he's not a smart guy. Sorry, he's just not.
Yep. He's
You're going to
not.
let him operate freely around the world and steal as much money as he can with both hands. And then when you get into the whole, I mean, when this all unravels, Ukraine with the biolabs, and now
Yep.
with the sex trafficking of children, and another
Yeah.
thing that came out that nobody wanted to touch that came out in the last few days was the selling of children for body parts.
I know. I didn't
I don't know
even
if you
think
saw
about
that. There's and people don't want to face that. But in Ukraine, what you have is, it's mass chaos over there. You have, women and children were just looking to get out of there, and strangers come up and saying, hey, you know what we can do? And this happened. Look, this has been going on for
it.
a
Yep.
long time. They're going on for hundreds of
Yep.
years. We can get your child to a good family in America. They'll be raised well. We'll pay you good money for it, and then you can make sure your child has a safe life. And people are panicking. They're taking the money, and they think their child's going to a home. And guess what? I hate to say it.
Well, not
They
to mention,
sell the body parts.
remember, John, they had, I think it was like 135 kids at one point in time, they alleged had been taken to Russia, had been kidnapped and taken. It might be part of that, sex trafficking. It could be part of the body parts. I mean, it
People
is
don't want to look at. They
absolutely
just don't want to look at it. That's one
terrifying.
thing that people do not want to look at is this
Just like the
whole
Holocaust. Nobody wanted to
marketing
admit that was happening.
of children, selling of children, whether it's for sex or for body parts. People just don't want to deal
Yeah,
with that. And from what you hear, the biggest procurer of children for sex is in the United States by far,
absolutely.
by far.
Absolutely.
And people don't want to look at it.
And it's disgusting. I can't wait to see one in particular that's coming out that deals specifically with that. I'm like, I'm so bad with
Oh,
my memory today.
with Jim Caviezel's movie.
Yeah, I want to see
Yeah.
that because
Yeah, I
that's what he
already have
deals
our
with.
tickets for the 4th of July. We're
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
I know they were trying to sell 2 million tickets ahead of time, and this is a movie that they've been trying to get put out there for years. This is a
yeah,
movie that's in the can. It's in the can almost 3 years, and they just
yeah.
could not get anybody to touch this. The studios originally Fox was in on. Fox bailed.
Yeah.
They bailed because it's
Had too
look
many
it's
had too many
too
people that were
close.
actually engaging in it.
It's too close. It's too it's this is a story that the powers that be don't
Yeah,
want you to know about. So, I mean, and
yeah.
I would imagine if Caviezel's in it, it's going to be pretty intense because he's probably the most intense actor that I've ever seen.
I think Jeanette just said we should all go see it. I think we should get a group together, maybe even from the HCGOP, and get a whole bunch of us together and go see this movie because we got to turn a blind eye to what's and here in Horry County, Myrtle Beach in particular. If you don't think sex trafficking is happening, boy, you are really not aware of your surroundings. It's absolutely happening. And that's one of the reasons why John have been so adamant, and I both have been adamant that being a casino here would um,
Bad element.
folks just
Bad
don't
element.
understand the element that brings to an area. I mean, Las Vegas has terrible human trafficking and any kind. In fact, even if there's a major, like an NFL football game or the Super Bowl or any kind of major sporting event, they bring in these kids and the boys for that very purpose because they're going to get people there. They're going to want that. Um, I,
Yeah, there was someone
I don't
that
know what to call it.
testified. Someone testified before a congressional committee, a professional, who said that in the last year, there are 87,000 missing children at the border.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I
87,000.
gotta address Larry really quickly. Larry says Trump supporters are mostly those who didn't leave their hometowns for better education and opportunities. Well, I've lived abroad. I have a doctorate's degree. So Larry, you're a moron. John and I are both retired educators. John's from New York, now lives here in South Carolina. I promise you, Larry, I've traveled to more places than you've dreamed of going to. I've lived on 3 continents, pal. So, just get off my page, you troll.
People have nothing to do with nothing better to do
Again,
with their
Larry,
time. Yeah.
intelligence in my pinky than you. What kind of education do you have? Where have you lived, Larry? My guessing is you probably live in your mother's basement. Yeah. Anyway, carry
Yeah.
on. Carry on.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't have time for any of that. So it
Yeah.
doesn't much matter. But just to get back to 87,000 missing children just at the border. that the federal government has no idea where they are. 87,000 children. If that doesn't bother you, I don't care what party you're from. If that doesn't bother you, there's something wrong with you. You're just going to say, oh, it's part of the problem. It just goes, it'll go away. No, it's not going to go away. It's 87,000 children, and nobody knows who they are. And they stopped the DNA testing at the border. Now, why did they stop doing that? Just unbelievable.
And that is the $1 million question.
Yeah, and like I said, as this unravels, and it's unraveling pretty quickly, I think that hopefully the American people will eventually get sick. When you throw up in your mouth a little and say, "Oh my God, we got to do something about this," because that's what's going to take some people. Just don't want to look at it, and what this is all about. And it's all the same issue. It's why you're seeing the attempted normalization of pedophilia.
Yeah.
Because if people are, oh, it's not that bad. As this unravels, if you have people that think it's not bad, I mean, that just shows you where we would be as a society. If you think that that's okay, you shouldn't be breathing, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know how problem that is. Not just here in the United States, it's obviously an international problem, because we're getting these kids in large part from other, third world countries. And that's one of the issues, obviously, with kids coming across the border. It's a terrible situation when you have the trafficking of I mean, another example of, like, I think it was a 4-year-old little boy being dropped over the wall. God, I mean, I don't know how it's like, which problems do we attack first? There's so many out there.
Yeah, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I think that a lot of it's all connected. I think a lot of these issues are connected, and I think like I said, as it unravels, you can go throw Epstein in there too. As this unravels, if it ever unravels, and that's why they go to such great lengths to try to protect the information from getting out to the public. The fact that you had Ghislaine Maxwell get convicted of procuring children for clients, yet none of the clients have been named. Well, how did you get her in jail if you don't have the kids,
Right.
and you don't have the kids, and you have some of the people testify, but you don't have the clients? How did you put somebody away for procuring stuff for clients who don't exist?
Right.
We'd like to, with all the leaking that goes on, all the leaking that's gone on. I mean, Jack Smith, who's the special prosecutor, he leaked, and what he did was completely illegal with the Trump stuff. He leaked. Well, when is somebody going to leak Epstein's list?
Yeah, because Epstein's list probably has Bill Clinton on there.
There's too many people on it, and it's again, it's both sides.
He might be.
It's both.
It is both sides. Oh yeah, absolutely. They are Republicans and
There's
Democrats.
A lot of people involved in this, and
people that aren't even political probably been going there.
I have my theories about all of that too. That was
What do you think about? I heard a theory that said that he may have been a CIA type thing where they were.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, and people will, people will tell you that Mossad was involved in that, Israel, that their intelligence agency was involved in it. And I mean, when you have to look at the background too of who this is, Epstein, first of all, nobody could ever explain to you how he made his money. The guy has he had unlimited funds, yet if you look at his background, he doesn't. There's no reason for him to have it. Like, what did he do for a living? Where did he get all this money from? And if you go back to the beginning, I think you know this story. He was a teacher. He was an instructor at the Dalton School, which is a very prestigious prep school in Manhattan. And he was hired to teach there and did not have a bachelor's degree at the time. Yet he was hired to teach there. The headmaster of the school at the time was Bill Barr's father. It was William Barr's father, the attorney general. Wow. Yes, that Bill Barr. It was his father was the headmaster, hired Epstein. Okay, now Bill Barr's father was in the OSS. So he was in military intel, right? And then Barr himself was intel before he went into justice. And they know he knows Epstein. I mean, come on, it's there's no coincidence, really. You're gonna get old to that. I mean, to me, all of it's an intel op, and it was done strictly for blackmail. Whether you were there for that purpose or not, if you're on that list, I mean, hey, look, there's a possibility that there are people on the list that visited the island who had nothing to do with any of that. It's quite possible, but the fact that you're on the list still makes you a blackmail possibility.
Absolutely.
And if you notice, Alan Dershowitz was one of the few people who his name was mentioned, And he stood up and said, "Hey, I'm suing because I'm telling you right now, I was on that list, but the reason I was on that list is because I did go there, and I went there with my wife and my daughter because I knew Epstein from Harvard University because he was on the board at Harvard, Epstein. Now, don't ask me how, but he was on the board at Harvard. So he knew Dershowitz from there, and Dershowitz had done some legal work for him. Hey, everybody's entitled to an attorney. But Dershowitz was misidentified, and then the lady who made the allegation actually withdrew the allegation. She said, "You know what? I was mistaken. It was not him. It was not him." But he was one of the few people that was on the list that had the chops to stand up and go, "Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I knew Epstein, and I was there. I knew him from Harvard. I worked as his attorney. So yeah, we visited, but I was with my wife and my daughter. Now what?" So everybody that's on that list is still susceptible to blackmail, but they might not have been there. Therein lies the tapes. There were reportedly taping systems in every room on that island. So if you were in one of those rooms, there's probably info on that. And I can't believe for a minute that they destroyed all those tapes. Not for a minute. They're too valuable to blackmail people that you want to get rid of, cancel people from society, eliminate them completely, all of the above, whatever you want to do. So I think that was a long time, deep intel op, that whole thing. And it all involved the trafficking of young girls, unfortunately, and boys too.
Right. Absolutely. Well, folks, we've come to the end of our hour, and it's been very interesting. Again, it's really important that you still remain active and feel like, my vote doesn't count. It does count. It does matter. I go back to one of the things that I think was a benefit of the Bush Gore outcome was that folks finally realized that election was determined by basically 1,000 votes down in Florida, which is essentially the size of a church congregation, a small church at that. So that got people involved. But now that we're having these other problems, I think it's once again turning people off. So you have that issue. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are well read, that we are well educated, aware of what's going on. Take part in everything. Despite what the loonies on the left want to declare that we all watch, what is it? I don't know that I don't know anybody that watches mainstream media. I really don't, John. I quit watching mainstream media probably 6 years ago. I quit watching it then. So I do actually listen to various podcasts, listen to a plethora of individuals. It's not one particular side or the other, because I want to be well informed of what both sides are thinking, because that's the only way you can really come up with a conclusive response and answer to what's happening. So folks, please stay involved, stay informed, get active. And if you have questions or concerns or things you want us to talk about here in the state of South Carolina, please reach out to us and let us know what is interesting to you, and we'll see what we can do to cover that story. That's all I got, John. Anything else from you today?
Yeah, one thing, anybody who equates your level of education with your level of intelligence knows
Yeah,
nothing about the human
right.
condition. Some of the smartest people I know went to high school and that was it. And there are you got a whole city full of people in DC who have masters and PhDs who don't have a brain in their head. So if you'd like to draw that comparison, go ahead. But otherwise, have a great weekend.
Absolutely. And I'll also say it's interesting that liberals will say that conservatives hang with conservatives, but liberals don't hang with us either. So, and there's never been a conservative event where liberals didn't try to shut us down, or in fact shut us down. When you look at the converse of that, shut down liberals when they come to speak. So, you know, we understand what it really means to practice the Constitution as it's written, not as we want it to be written. So thanks, folks. As always, God bless, Godspeed, and we will see you next time.